The Prime Minister, at Prime Minister's Questions this morning, told the House of Commons that the EU are currently insisting that if they pass a new law in the future and the UK doesn't adopt that law itself on its own statute books, if it doesn't slavishly follow that particular law, rule or regulation, then they want the automatic right to punish her and retaliate. So if we were to make our economy more dynamic and competitive, the EU would have the right to punish us for doing so. British social and employment standards are already higher than the EU's requirements, by the way. He went on to say that the EU is arguing that the UK should be the only sovereign independent nation state in the world not to have control over its fishing waters. He said he doesn't believe that they're terms that any Prime Minister could, or indeed should, accept. And my friends, he was absolutely right. I don't see how, as someone who campaigned heart and soul for Brexit, I don't see how a remotely acceptable deal can be done when faced with such unapologetically aggressive demands by Brussels. You know, France's stance on fish appears to be, well, if you don't give us all of it, because folks, they want to keep the migrants that they appear to be pretty lax about continuing to make perilous journeys across the English Channel, they want us to keep them, they want us to be that to be our problem. But they'll allow and continue to keep our fish and their rights to our waters. I mean, how dare we suggest that we won't allow France to dictate the terms of our own territorial waters? It's an utterly ludicrous position and a damn cheeky ask. Remain campaigners, right? They argue that we shouldn't give a damn about fish because it's such a small part of our economy. Well, folks, the Falkland Islands contain fewer people than we have fishermen in this country, yet we still fought a war for them, didn't we? These are terms that a nation would make a country that had just lost a war accept. This is cartoon. It's why, folks, I can't see why we're continuing these farcical negotiations. Why are we continuing talks, knowing that Michel Barnier's aggressive negotiating mandate hasn't changed, knowing that the EU, as a protectionist racket, desperate for the UK not to do well out of Brexit, won't change its negotiating mandate? Why are we continuing the talks if we're not willing to make significant concessions to the European Union? That seems to me, that's the concern, and I must tell you, I must be honest with you, that is my concern. And I don't know, folks, how anyone, even if you believe only half of the stuff that Brussels is demanding, could look at the last 4 years of negotiations and think, wow, you know what, that EU, I reckon my country should be a member of that proudly. What a fantastic cooperating club that thing is, of nations, of proud nation states. The EU clearly, folks, thinks of itself as a modern-day empire, you know, that can benevolently bestow upon its loyal subjects tariff-free trade. That isn't how this works, as the UK has proven by signing deals left, right and centre around the world with old allies and new. I reckon Boris, folks, needs to rediscover his inner Margaret Thatcher, who fought for that rebate so valiantly. He has to stand firm and be prepared to walk away from a dud deal. If he doesn't, I'm afraid to say, as someone who voted Conservative campaign for them in 2019, I was even at Downing Street in January on Brexit night. If he doesn't, he's toast. And more importantly, I think the Conservatives are toast too. The government would be exposed as witless, spineless and supine. If Boris signs up to a dud deal, folks, the Conservative Party will self-implode and end up in the same sorry old mess it was in under Mrs May. So Boris, my message to you is don't let the voters that backed you for the first time, millions of them, who were incredibly upset by the way in which their vote and voice had been silent by the establishment stitch-up that took place since June 2016. You, Boris, you gave them hope, and in return, they lent you their vote. Poll after poll tells us that they will not trust you again if you let them down on this. Do not let them down. It will be absolute turmoil for the Conservative Party and the end of days. It really will. Apocalyptic. I'm Darren Grimes for Reasons UK.